Do you know what time it is? It's supernatural story time. And if you're easily scared, and even if you're not, there's only one thing left to do. Just turn off the lights, because these are stories that you listen to only in the dark. Way Out Stories, Volume 3, Story Number 1. Ricky knew I was having trouble putting food on the table, so he called me up to say there's some roadkill down the way, just past the bridge. No shame in it. This is a big boy, Ricky said. Enough meat to really fill up your freezer. It was just a few days before the start of deer season. The woods were overflowing not just with animals but also pollen, insect noise, ghosts. You never knew what you could find on the side of the road. I asked Ricky how long he figured the roadkill had been there. Well, he said, seeing as I'm the one hit it about 10 minutes ago. So, why not take it yourself? I asked. Because I'm coming back from the dice and figured I'd not test my luck by adding another crime on top of that, Ricky said. The dice was the dice roll, the pub across town by the river, which meant Ricky was out on a drunk again, driving the back roads. A big cadaver in his truck bed might have drawn some unwanted attention, especially the Department of Transportation's laws against harvesting roadkill. Shot or run over, it made no difference. This time of year, no matter what kind of cadaver you had in your truck bed, it would land you on the wrong side of the law. Rest of my truck is banged all to hell anyway. This sucker was so big, Ricky said, cracked my whole damn windshield. You just leave it there in the road for someone to run over? Nah. Dragged it into the bushes as best I could, but you should be able to get out and find it easy enough if you pull over by the big tree. You know the one. I did, sure enough. I was in my tool shed when Ricky called, near 1 a.m., so my wife and kids were asleep in bed. But I knew the route in and out of the woods that the late-nighters took to avoid the law. It wasn't unusual for me to be awake at this hour. Ricky knew I could never sleep much anymore. We were the same like that. You tell me what you want to do, he said over the phone. Otherwise, I'll call somebody else to go pick it up off the road. No, I said, I want it. All right then. Call if you need anything else. Just make sure you delete me from your call history once we hang up. Ricky, since when am I a fool? Just making sure, he said. You've been a good and godly family man for a while now. Didn't know if you'd forgotten. I remember everything, I told him. You wouldn't guess how hard it is on the spirit, how deep the fear to know that we make one small mistake in your life, one small offense, everything you love can be taken from you. On that night, Ricky called me about the roadkill he'd hit. I'd been up late, building furniture in my shed. I've been doing that a while now to bring in some extra cash. Ricky and I had once been partners, before doing some time together at Livesay Correction Institution about 5 years earlier, for some bad things I'd rather not discuss. But the result was that even when folks were begging people to come back to work, they never wanted a felon like me. 5 years, 1 month, and 3 days. I'd been on parole. As of that night. Too long, no doubt. But given the multitude of other sins they could have gotten me for, I tried taking it as a blessing. Yet I knew I was living with an axe over my head. Sarah, my wife, had seen past my shortcomings when I'd met her at the Methodist church a few months after I'd gotten out, and we'd since gone on to build a life together. Our son Jacob was 4, our daughter Abigail had just turned 2. Sarah worked all day as a home health aide, and I watched over the kids while trying to find part-time work, scavenging whatever meager job I could find. Ricky, my old partner, had taken a different path. It was always late at night when he called. We weren't supposed to contact one another on court order. That never stopped me from picking up. The roadkill was not far. I got in my truck and kept the headlights off as I eased out of the curved dirt driveway, making sure to wait until I'd passed by our neighbors' shacks and had reached the main road before I flipped them on. These were wooded trails that terrified me in ways most people wouldn't understand. My headlamps washed over twisted tree branches and overhanging leaves and sagging power lines. Even the main road was empty this late. Only one other car passed me by as I drove, the 5 miles or so to the crossroads, under the bridge where Ricky had dragged the roadkill into the bushes. Right away, I saw he'd been sloppy. Part of his truck's grill lay in the road, glinting like the river gold in my headlamps. I pulled over and cut the engine. When I stepped out into the night air, the fragrance of the woods confronted me. These earthy, damp smells that were more memory than sense. All the nights Ricky and I had hidden things in the woods, now layered over one another in my mind, as I walked over to pick the chunk of his grill out of the road. We'd hidden so much out here, so close to our homes. It was starting to change me, or maybe it already had, and I was only just noticing. Once, a few months earlier, my wife Sarah had asked me why I kept the windows rolled up when I drove down these roads on cool spring nights. Wouldn't it be nicer, she said, to let the fresh air in? And how could I tell her the truth, which was, I felt as if ghosts were whispering to me with the windows open. The feel of the wind out here was like fingertips on my neck, not pressing exactly, just grazing, reminding me of who I was. That and the sounds, crickets chirping, faraway trains wailing, the silence that filled the space between the tree branches, like voices talking, but you can't ever hear what they're saying about you. Bending down in the middle of the road now, in the whispering quiet of the night, I lifted the grilled chunk of Ricky's truck in my hand. Even by moonlight, I could see the part number on the back. "You drunk fool," I said out loud. The chunk must have come off when he slammed into the roadkill. He'd been too drunk to see it lying over the lane line of the road. I tossed the debris in my truck bed. Had the police found it on the road, they could have traced it right back to the make and model of Ricky's truck. It took more time to find the roadkill. Ricky had really dragged it deep into the woods. He would do that sometimes when he'd been drinking. He put more effort than was needed to get a particular job done, as if overcompensating for his drunkenness. Burying holes too deep, for example, or setting things on fire and waiting too long to assure everything had become ashes before leaving, all while missing simple things like a grill chunk in the road, or worse. I found the roadkill's cadaver lying where he said, in some bushes deep in the woods. Ricky wasn't lying. It was a big sucker. I dragged it out by the legs, but had to stop a few times to catch my breath. Before emerging from the woods, I waited a few seconds by the big tree, listening for any oncoming cars, knowing if I was caught here, I could land back in prison for a parole violation. The night was quiet, breathing around me. I felt as I were being watched by 1,000 eyes. I told myself I was just feeding my family, doing what I had to do, risking it for them. I dragged the roadkill out into the pavement. Despite how many times I dealt with dead things, I felt bad the way the poor body scraped limp against the road, even dead. We all should have some dignity. When I managed to squat down and heave the thing up into my truck bed, I covered it with a tarp and tied it down carefully, covering it up to relieve my own worries as much as I'd hoped it gave comfort to it as well, wherever his roadkill soul had flown off to. Deer, birds, squirrels, rabbits. How many confused animals had died on this curve of the road since it'd been paved? My sins, by any account, were far less than the sins of the automobile in its endless stampede through this wilderness. And as true as I believed that to be, it didn't lessen my guilt. For tonight's roadkill, I purposely brought other crates and stacks of wooden buckets to situate around the body in my truck bed to make the covered lump look less obvious. I drove slowly on my way back, weaving down the roads carved through the woods, feeling my breath calming the closer I got to the safety of my dirt driveway. I was about a mile from home when the blue and red lights of the sheriff's deputy flashed behind me. I've always prided myself on staying calm during traffic stops. Ricky, though, was something else. Back when we were still partners, I once saw Ricky dance his way out of a DUI checkpoint stop despite us having contraband in our trunk that could have sent us to prison for the rest of our lives. I say he danced, and I meant it. The deputy had asked Ricky to step out of the car. Then he'd had him doing the field sobriety walk, one foot in front of the other, Ricky touching a finger to his nose, when out of the blue he decided to spin around and do a Michael Jackson moonwalk right in front of the cruiser. Ricky chopped his feet and managed to keep swinging his arms side to side while touching his nose, spinning gracefully back around and then stopping on a dime with his arms outstretched as if to say, "See? Ta-da!" I had witnessed Ricky drink no fewer than 10 whiskey sodas that night. The officer was laughing as he let us go. "What are you so stressed out about?" Ricky asked as he drove on, lighting a cigarette and grinning at me. He even leaned out to wave at the deputy as the cruiser drove past us. I didn't say anything. All I did was lean forward, open the glove box, and put the loaded pistol I'd been clutching in my right hand back inside with the fake insurance papers. But that's it. I was calm because I knew what had to be done if things went south. On this late night, with the roadkill in my truck bed, I pulled to the side of the road and let my muscle memory kick in. The red and blue lights of the sheriff's deputy cruiser strobing inside the cabin of my truck. I had a skill where I could move my body without moving my silhouette. From behind, the deputy who pulled me over would not have seen me move the handgun from the center console. As he walked up to my truck, he would not have seen me wedge the gun in the crevice on the right side of my seat. Hidden, yet I could pull it out swiftly, like a cowboy drawing a pistol from a holster. My posture had remained unchanged all the while, my arm moving independently behind the cover of the seats and my own body. Then I rolled down my window and waited. The air of the woods eased into the car, filling my throat, entering me. When he got beside my open window, the deputy stepped one foot up on the side bar of my truck. "Evening," he said. "Get your license and registration, please." I handed him my documents. We chatted back and forth. I was fine, steady. I didn't flinch. Then he took the documents back to his cruiser and ran my information. I paused, my mind waiting. When he came back, the deputy said, "Thought I saw you driving a little sluggish, so just wanted to check. Heard about some commotion going on tonight. You been drinking?" "No, sir." "What are you doing out this late then?" "Well, I'll tell you," I said, and I laughed in a way that sounded like a real laugh, a non-threatening laugh, saying now, "Got 2 young kids in the house and a wife working double shifts. Hard to get much work during the day, you know." The deputy's posture relaxed just enough for me to notice. He said, "I hear that. My wife's expecting our first, matter of fact." "Well, congratulations." Because he seemed like he might be a casual talker, I added, "You work nights normally, or just pulling doubles to get out of the house?" He grinned at that. I got the feeling he hadn't talked much about it, like he didn't have anyone around to tell. "Doubles when I can," he said, nodding. "Good to have the money. Figure it'll be hard once the baby comes." "Brother, you don't even know," I said. "That bad?" "Enjoy the peaceful nights of chasing down bad guys while you have the chance," I said. "A baby crying all night will make a car chase seem like a day at the lake." He exhaled out his nose. A soft laugh, and I imagined him as he must have been years earlier, a little boy at church with big dreams, as he handed my license and papers back to the open window. Then he did something he shouldn't have done. He stepped all the way back down in the dirt and glanced at the back of my truck, getting a closer look at what all I had piled up in the bed. He was a young guy, a kid really. As he stepped up to look at my truck bed, I touched my fingers to the grip of the handgun to feel it was still there. The deputy was leaning over fully now to look in the bed. I could hear him touching at things, moving things, sniffing around. I looked straight ahead out of the windshield. My grip on the handgun tightened. "Well, shoot," the deputy said a moment later, reappearing at the window. "I see you've got something in your truck bed under that tarp, huh?" I closed my eyes, breathing in the smell of the woods that surrounded me. "But I decided not to check what it was," the deputy said, patting his hand on the top of my truck. "Figure I can guess what's in there, huh? But ain't like deer season ain't more than 3 days off anyway. No use in bothering you about that." I opened my eyes now, my right hand releasing the grip of the handgun hidden at my side. "Well," I told him, exhaling, "I surely do appreciate you for that." "Hey, we all gotta eat," he said. "Sorry for the hassle. No warning or citation." The deputy glanced to the side, then looked back at me. "And so you know, I've got no plans to report this stop to your parole officer. But when I ran your plate through LEADS, it automatically popped up in my system, which means it'll appear in your account if your PO checks. Just in case you get a call about being out so late. Shouldn't factor in, but thought it polite to give you notice." "I'm aware, but hey, appreciate the heads up all the same." "Sure, take care." "When are you expecting, by the way?" I said. I was looking at him through my side view mirror. The deputy already started walking back to his cruiser. He turned and said, "Pardon, your baby," I said. "When's the due date?" He put his hands on his hips, as if he'd forgotten. "They say about 3 months, give or take. It'll come before you know it. Already seems like it's happening too fast." "Sure, that's all too normal," I told him. "Don't beat yourself up down the road. If you feel guilty about making a mistake, you can't protect them from everything. And so, you know yourself, you might not sleep on the next few years because, trust me, it can feel like the whole world got a whole lot sharper and more dangerous and evil the moment your kid arrives. It's like a light got shone and you see things in color and you see how bad things are for you and for everyone. And you try to fix it all while grabbing all around at what to do. But nothing can be done. Nothing can be perfect. Forgive yourself for your past mistakes. Nothing you can do about that. All you can do is try your best moving forward. Try not to make history repeat itself. For your kid's sake, and most of all, stay safe, son. These are dark woods. The young deputy stepped back into the road, his arms dangling at his sides. His right hand hovered over his gun's holster. He looked like he was about to say something, like he was about to do something. Then he said, "You too," and walked back to his cruiser as I drove off. Only this time, I left my window down, feeling the ghost at my neck the whole way home. My own father was a good man. As a child, I learned from him how to dress and butcher a deer. The animal is not so different from us, my father said, and I remember the care he took as his knife blade separated the deer muscles from bone, sinew from flesh, his large but gentle hands placing the cuts of meat in organized piles beside him. I remember this as I dressed the roadkill in my tool shed that night after arriving back home from the wooded roads. My father stopped talking to me when I was 16 years old. By the time I'd been incarcerated for the first time, he was dead of a heart attack. He would not have approved of me using the skills he'd shown me the way I was using them tonight on this mangled roadkill dragged out of the woods. But I was never a good hunter. Unlike him, I always hesitated. I would see the animal standing still in the copse of trees, its neck angled downward to drink from a stream, and I could not bring myself to pull the trigger. He saw this as a failure in me, but the truth is, I had the strength and discipline never to kill anything that did not deserve it or was not out to hurt me. And in this regard, I did not understand him as much as he did not understand me. I was not responsible for this roadkill, which I was now carving up in my shed. I was just making sure the death wasn't in vain. Close to sunrise, as I was finishing up the butchering, my phone vibrated from where I'd left it on the shelf. I glanced at the screen without touching it, my hands bloody with butchered flesh. It was Ricky calling. I let it go to voicemail. I didn't want to hear his voice this close to morning. Some of the cuts of meat I bagged and put into the freezer. The good cuts I left for the fridge. When my family woke up and saw what I brought them, my wife would smile and tell me I was a good man, and that night we would have the table set with delicious steaks and mashed potatoes and gravy, like Thanksgiving or Christmas dinner out of the blue. You have to count your blessings when you got them or create them, because it's hard to be a good man these days. They make it so tough to provide. You try your best and it's never enough. You got to scavenge what you can. Like Ricky said, no shame in it. The bones from which I pulled loose the flesh, I started simmering in a pot to make a bone broth. The next day I would drain the bones out, including the jaw and the skull, dry them and then crush the bones into fine powder, which I would dissolve in the streams in the backwoods a few miles away, like I always did. The hydrogen in the bones would nourish the soil would nourish the plants would yield fruit and life, so I heard. I read that once from a science book where I'd been in prison. According to the book, the chemicals of life always reform anew, so that no death is final, no ghost beyond salvation. Seeds emerge from husks always, but some things need to be burnt altogether. As the bones were still simmering that morning, I went out to the backyard of my own family's shack and started a fire. I waited until the fire was roaring. Then I went back inside and took all the inedible remains of the roadkill and carried them outside. I placed them into the fire piece by piece until they caught. All around me the birds were waking up. It was just about morning now. The first hint of sun touched the leaves of the sugar maple trees beyond my shack. I grabbed a warm can of beer from a bucket by the fire pit and cracked it open. My wife wouldn't mind. I had a lot of cooking to do that day, and I'd earned it. The beer tasted good, like I'd done something with my night. Standing by the fire, I waited until the heat had devoured the roadkill's t-shirt, his jeans and underwear, his shoes and socks. Based on the clothes, I'd figured he'd been homeless. There were more and more of them out in the woods these days. They'd been wandering, patting their feet at the ground. Ricky probably hadn't even seen him hobbling alongside the road until he hit him. By the condition of the body, this individual hadn't taken long to die. I watched as the flames spread over the ribbons of skin I carved off his body, that callous patting of his feet and toes, and the roadkill's mostly bald scalp. Oddly, his cheap wallet took the longest to melt in on itself, whatever cards or papers or pictures inside fusing together, until there was no identity left. All my years with Ricky, I never did look inside the wallets, not once. In half an hour or so, my wife and kids came down for breakfast. Then I would go inside, pour some coffee, and tell them I hoped they had good appetites because tonight we would dine like the president himself. Next story. The Superstition Mountains, to be exact, which around here are just called the Superstitions. They stick up from the dirt and dust like a dragon's back molar, thick, otherworldly, sinister. There are stories about this place, legends of lost Dutchmen and lore of hidden gold. Many people have spent a good deal of time out here digging and climbing and spelunking, trying to find it, claim it, me being one of them. Now, I've been up to Superstitions a couple of times before, sometimes alone, sometimes with friends, but the day I discovered the demon, I was with my dog Charles. We were like all those who came before us looking for the lost Dutchman's gold mine, a place said to hold all the riches you could ever want. And though I thought it was just a silly tale, a reason to get my ass off the couch and out hiking in a way, and secretly I wanted it. And I wanted it bad. That day Charles and I were out there from dusk till dawn, surveying the land, hiking around the peaks and the crags, feasting on ill-made sandwiches and the scraps, looking for something unusual and peculiar and shiny. It was nearing full dark when we found it. A small red blip in the rocks. A door. It was rusted, reddish, corroded, like it was sick and was rotting from the inside out. I walked towards it, puzzled and intrigued. Beside me, Charles panted and watched me with deep trust. There was something about it, and it piqued my curiosity. And for some reason indeterminable by me, I just had to know what was inside. As I got closer to it, I realized there was a large angular key sticking out from the exact middle of it, almost like someone had opened it, and in their excitement left it there. I reached out tentatively, not knowing what would happen. The door was hot to the touch, almost scalding. I bumped it with the tips of my fingers, and it swung open slightly, revealing an impenetrable darkness beyond and the faint smell of lilac. I looked back at Charles, who was standing behind me, watching me. He met my gaze and wagged his tail. Come on, I said, deciding then and there, this had to be it. This had to be where all that gold was hidden. And I found it. We found it. Charles was going to get a big steak tonight. Using a rock, I bumped the door more open and clambered inside, Charles close on my heels. After a moment's thought, I reached out and grabbed the key. It was surprisingly cold, and I pocketed it. Almost immediately, the door slammed shut, like someone had pulled it closed. Someone angry. There was a singular hissing noise, the kind steam might make if let out of a hole too small. And then, just like that, we were enclosed in complete darkness. Charles started growling, low and insistent. Spooked, I flicked my headlamp on and swung it around the space. We were in a small cave of some sort with what looked like a rather large tunnel leading down into the darkness. There were rows and rows of stalagmites and stalactites sticking out from the cave around us. They looked like bare teeth. From around one of the large stalagmites or stalactite, I can never tell the difference, a human leg popped in and out of view. It looked small, maybe a woman or a teen's leg, and was wearing a bright yellow high top covered in blue flowers. Peonies, maybe? Hello? The voice sounded different, like none I had ever heard before. Like a man and a woman speaking at the same time, but in harmony, high-pitched and excited. So damn excited. Hello, hello. I know your name. It's... Yeah, I'm not going to tell you my real name. Do you want to know how? My heart pounded its way up into my mouth, choking me, making it hard to speak. Who are you? There was a pause, and in that moment the steady stream of Charles' low growl overtook the space. Oh no, dog? The voice paused, then spoke again, its voice dropping in pitch faster than my stomach. I think you should run now. Not wanting to take my eyes away from the foot, I felt behind me with my hands, trying to find the borders of the rusted red door, but I couldn't. Finally, I turned and saw that it was gone. The damn thing had disappeared. A sick laughter boiled up from behind me, pouring over me, drenching me with fear. Beside me, Charles started barking a loud, mad bark. Fully panicked now, I turned and focused on the only opening I could see, that long, dark, perfectly carved tunnel. It went down, down, down into the darkness beyond. Come on, Char. We took off, and as we ran, the laughter never got further away, but stayed right there behind us, as if it was coming out of the goddamn walls themselves. The tunnel went all the way down into an enormous room with high, angular walls. It was so big I couldn't see where anything ended. Charles and I rounded the corner, and my heart stopped. Voices, male and female, echoed up to me from beyond the rear of the room. Then, as I watched, two people appeared out of the darkness before I even had time to react. I stood there, Charles by my side, out in the open, until they noticed me. They were talking about something. In retrospect, the guy was saying, I still think I should have apologized about the dog. Shit way to die. Guy's probably still in shock. Yeah, the girl interrupted. But you saved his life and cleaned up. And that's what matters, not the... Who are you? They both stopped short, see me standing in the middle of the tunnel. And it's what they were wearing that made me hesitate more than anything else. The guy was decked out in, and I mean this in the most literal way possible, full tactical gear, complete with some sort of night vision goggles, gas mask combination. He was also inexplicably holding a broken guitar. The girl, who looked to be in her 20s, maybe older or younger, was wearing a ratty, muddy Berzoom shirt, ripped shorts, and green flip-flops. I looked between them, not knowing what to say. Instead, Charles took a tentative step forward and made the first comment. A small woofing sound, curious and yet surprisingly blunt. He was looking directly at the girl. What are you on about? She looked directly back at Charles. The guy and I looked between them for a moment. Me confused, he amused. And then the guy looked up at me and said, No, seriously. How the hell did you get in here? How are you alive? His voice was slightly muffled by the mask. I gaped at them before finding my voice and telling them honestly. There was a door and a key, a weird cold black one. I have it here. I slid it from my pocket and showed them briefly. The guy in the gas mask didn't respond, but instead looked down at the girl, who looked back up at him and shot him a guilty grin. He shook his head and looked back at me. And you're okay? Yeah, I said. But alive? What did you mean by that? The girl, who had turned her attention back to Charles, laughed and said, What? Did you not see that large effing reptilian on your way down? Have you not heard the legends? What they say about this place? Reptilian? The guy looked over at the girl, then back at me, and pushed his goggles mask up onto his head so I could see his eyes, his face. She means a demon. Demon? I laughed. What? Isn't this just the Lost Dutchman's mine? You guys are just searching for the treasure and decided to play a spooky little trick on me, right? It was the guy's turn to laugh, and he did, heartily. Oh man, are you in for one hell of a shock? Turn around, but do it slowly like your life depended on it. A freakish low laughter shook the walls of the cave, and I turned around slowly, just like the guy told me to do. At first, I didn't see anything, but as my eyes adjusted to the light, I saw it. There, just by the shadows of an oddly shaped boulder, a foot. The same foot, wearing the same yellow shoe, except the peonies were red now, bright red. It did a little jig. I turned back to look at the man, my eyes wide in shock and disbelief. He just looked back at me with a no, right? Expression, then cleared his throat and said, Where are you most afraid of, bud? What? That's a weird thing to ask someone. Fair, he replied. Just tell me so we're ready. He gestured to the girl and himself. The girl, though, she just shook her head and muttered, Yeah, no, just him. Uh, what am I most scared of? Yep. I don't know. Crushing debt? This got a small, quick burst of laughter from the guy. No, no, he said, still smiling. Like your nightmares. What are they made of? The girl scoffed and rolled her eyes at the guy beside her. That's an effing stupid way of asking that question, bud. Then she looked at me. Ever read It by Stephen King? Of horror? Tried, but that book is long. Yeah, but imagine that. What? It! The guy cleared his throat, obviously wanting to help. Wasn't there the same thing in that book with that wizard boy Messiah? It was the girl's turn to laugh. Harry Potter. And yeah, the Bogart. But where do you think she got the idea from, huh? The guy shrugged, looked at her straight face, then said with sarcasm, Oh, I don't know, maybe they both got it from all that demonology and lore and mythology shit we just spent hours reading. Because, it's basic human archetype of fear itself. The girl made an angry sort of growling noise at the guy, then turned back to me and said, It's a goddamn thing that changes into whatever you fear the most. Aliens, reptilians, deadites, Nazis, giant bugs, werewolves, that kind of stuff. I guess you could call it a demon. Werewolves, huh? The guy smirked at the girl, who rolled her eyes. Hey, she said to him, shut up. While they were talking, and I was watching them totally bemused, none of us had noticed Charles creeping ever so tentatively towards the foot. He must have been hypnotized or something because that dog never leaves my side. A small yelping sound burst out behind us, and we all turned at the same moment to see a hideous creature crouched on all fours with Charles pinned beneath it. And yeah, okay. If I had to pick a thing, I would say that thing, that slimy and scaly dead thing with rotten skin and yellow pointed teeth, and that weird ass jerking stop motion movement, wearing the same outfit my ex wore when I saw her last. That thing was the thing I was scared of most. Nope, the guy bellowed, dropping the broken guitar, and pulled out the biggest handgun I've ever seen. Not another goddamn dog. Better cover your ears, the girl said, and eyes, she added as an afterthought. And the guy, without so much as 2 seconds of time to aim, blasted the gun right at that thing. The flash from the tip of the barrel was blinding bright, too bright, and the subsequent boom was heart and head shatteringly loud. The bullet hit the thing in the shoulder and blew off a large portion of it, splattering the wall behind it black with goo. It screamed and transformed. I thought it might turn into the reptilian the girl had mentioned, but it didn't. Instead, it turned into another man. A normal-looking guy. He wore a white shirt, blue jeans, and cowboy boots. And despite the wound on his shoulder, he stooped and picked up Charles, holding him high, blocking his face with his body. Charles growled and snapped and whimpered. Next to me, the girl made a shocked face and looked between the man in the cowboy boots and the guy with a gun. Well, shit, the guy was still aiming at the thing, but was hesitant to fire, clearly not wanting to hit Charles. He was also very clearly ignoring the girl's reaction, too. She looked back from the guy to the man in the cowboy boots and seemed to decide something. She opened her mouth and started to sing. I had visions, I was in them. I was looking into the mirror to see a little bit clearer rottenness and evil in me. A look of sheer disbelief crossed the guy's face, and he chanced a glance back at the girl. Really? Of all songs? That's the one? That's the one you choose? She just smiled and kept singing. The guy looked over at me grinning and lowered his gun, but only slightly. See, he said over the voice of the singing girl, glancing between me and that monster. Music. Any kind of music controls it. You don't necessarily have to play an instrument or even be that good. The girl shot him a glare, still singing, but as long as there's some beat to it, well, he gestured at the demon with his head. I looked over it and it laughed. I couldn't help it, the creature. It was just swaying and swaying to her swinging, no matter how off-key and warbling it was. It had transformed again from the man to a large, reptilian, 7 feet tall with shiny blue-green scales and yellow diamond-shaped eyes. It twirled suddenly, dropping Charles in the process. He yelped and scrambled over to me, limping. There was a large gash on his left flank, and it was gushing blood. Here, the guy said, kneeling down and placing his gun on the ground. I can stop the bleeding. Hold him. He pulled some sort of liquid bandage out of his vest and swiftly but precisely stemmed the flow of blood from Charles' leg. I thanked him, then looked back up at the girl, and that thing, slightly afraid, but more amused. She was still singing, but she was doing something else now, dancing, right up next to the reptilian, who was now wearing a cowboy hat and a ridiculously campy grin. Dancing with your demons, huh? She nodded, still singing. I looked over to the guy. Kind of poetic, right? Kinda, he said, patting Charles on the head and standing up. Now stay put. We're going to put this asshole back where it belongs. They left, the singing girl leading the way, the dancing reptilian following, and the guy, gas mask goggles back on, bringing up the rear with his gun trained on it. They returned about 15 minutes later and escorted me back to the cave I had entered from. The door was still gone, and we stood there for nearly a full minute before the guy reached forward toward me and said, "Key." Oh, I reached into my pocket, pulled the key out, and handed it to him. He flipped his goggles down and surveyed the walls around us for a moment. Suddenly he strode forward and stuck the key straight into the bedrock and turned it. There was a resounding click, and slowly the rusted red door reappeared, like it had been there the whole time, and some trick of the light, or the way it was built into the rock, prevented me from seeing it. But the door, I said in complete disbelief, it disappeared. Yeah, the guy said. It tends to do that when it's locked. But this bad boy here, he wiggled the key at me, it tends to light it up. He tapped his goggles, then turned and swung the door open to a sweet, sweet rush of fresh air. And just like that, we were out. Between us, the guy and I got Charles down the mountain while the girl trailed behind, humming snatches of that song every so often. We stopped near one of the trailheads where three cars were parked. The moon was high in the sky, and there was a slight cool breeze blowing in from the west. Above us, the stars twinkled mischievously, like they knew deep, dark secrets that were just bursting to spill. I was still carrying Charles, who was whimpering slightly, and the guy glanced sideways at him with a look of what can only be described as concern on his face. He turned to me, digging for something in one of the front pockets of his black vest. Here, he said, finally, pulling out a wad of paper. Get him looked at, he nodded to Charles. Let me pay for it. He handed the wad of paper to me, and I looked down at it. Seeing immediately that it was at least 2 dozen $50 bills, I looked back up at him and said, Really? It's just money. Get yourself something, too. Try to forget about that, he gestured to the rusted metal door with his head. The girl looked over at him imploringly. Oh, can I have some money, too? He laughed in the girl's face and said, Shut up. Then looked back at me. Forget about this place, okay? Don't tell anyone about it, or about us. They might come out here looking for answers. It's not safe. And we wouldn't want anyone getting all the way, down there. He paused thoughtful and added, I mean it. Then, to the girl, he said, Come on. They turned toward the black car. I watched him for a few seconds before yelling, Wait! What exactly is down there? The girl huffed and climbed into the passenger seat. But the guy, well, he turned back, grinned widely, and said something with a small wink. And it was the way he said it, all of it, playfully enticing, like he really wanted was for people to go out and explore and find out the truth for themselves. It was how he said it that made me decide to write this all down and share it with you. I think it's what he really wanted. What did he say? He said, Why? The gateway to hell itself.